Is trying to connect. Hey, it's Ranger Russ at the Meigs Nature Center. Today is another episode of My Favorite Animal, and today's animal is actually connected to our afternoon program. So I want to start out by telling everyone this afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're going to have an author, John Himmelman, will read his book about box turtles. It's not a live broadcast. He's recorded many of these books, and we're going to play it at 2 o'clock. I'll do a little intro at 2 o'clock, and then we'll post the video that you can watch. So very excited to be working with John on this project. Although it's over distance, we haven't even seen each other, just sending emails back and forth. But we're getting things done, which is really cool. Before we take a look at the animal today, which is a box turtle, since he's doing box turtles this afternoon, I'm going to talk about box turtles this morning. I need to remind everybody about the park rules. So we're having some concerns. People are wondering, why do we still need to wear a mask if we're out in public? The parks, are they open? Are they closed? And that's going to change depending on how full the parks get. The capacity of the parks has been shrunk down so that we can keep greater social distance. So please just check on the Department of Energy, Environment, and Environmental Protection's website. Check our Twitter page. Take a look before you go to a state park. There are state parks all over Connecticut. Nobody in the state of Connecticut's greater than 15 minutes from a state park. So if one park is full, just find another park. There are plenty of beautiful parks across the state. And please help our law enforcement by following the rules. Keep your dogs on a leash. Don't gather together. Don't picnic. Don't have, create situations where our officers are going to have to approach you and put their health at risk. Okay? They are trying to maintain social distance. They're trying to do their job from a distance. It's a hard enough job to do when you get to go up and talk to someone. Makes it a lot harder if they have to approach you in these conditions, wearing a mask and things like that. So if everybody follows the rules, we maintain our social distance. That's 20 mice, if you want to think of it that way, 20 mice distance between you, or one bear, between you and other people that you encounter on the trail. That would be really helpful for our officers that are trying to keep everybody safe. So let's give a big shout out to the officers, and we're going to do our part by maintaining social distance and following the other rules. I want to remind everyone that these programs are on the meigsnaturecenter.org virtual learning center. They're archived there. You can also see them on our YouTube page, Meigs Point Nature Center YouTube. And obviously you're watching this on Facebook Live, so you know how to reach us there. If you have any questions, post them as we go. I also appreciate it if you put up where you're from. And I see someone is saying hi from Niantic, so hello to Niantic. Are you ready to see today's animal? Because this is absolutely one of the most fascinating animals that we have in the state of Connecticut. I probably say that about a lot of animals, but wait till you hear what this animal can do. So this is a box turtle. This is an eastern box turtle. Box turtles are found all over the state of Connecticut. Their numbers are in decline though. So we're not seeing as many baby box turtles as we used to. They don't reproduce very fast. So a box turtle will lay 8 or so eggs. They don't have to lay them every year though. So that makes it very sporadic that they actually lay their eggs. This one is a male. So we'll talk about eggs when we look at the female a little bit more. But if you look on the bottom, this is what really makes a box turtle special. The bottom of the shell is the plastron. Okay, and I'm going to remind everyone that we have vocabulary words right next to our videos in the Virtual Learning Center. So the plastron, that's probably a pretty good vocabulary word. That's the bottom of the shell. The top of the shell is the carapace. So this is the carapace, and here we have the plastron. If you see this line across here, this is a hinge. And just like a hinge allows a door to open and close, this hinge allows the turtle's plastron to open and close. Now, he's probably not going to go inside of his shell. They only go in if they're scared. But you can see I can move that. The back can also move. If he pulled his legs and his tail in, he could close this up and he could seal himself completely inside of his shell. So really special. Box turtles seal themselves in. They box themselves into their shell. Now, they have to do that because box turtles are primarily living on land. They actually really don't like the water very often. They don't need to go to water to get a drink. They get their moisture, 98% of their moisture comes from their diet. So the things that they're eating, berries, worms, lots of things like that, are full of moisture, and that's where they get the moisture that they need. You can tell a male from a female if you look at the eye of this turtle. Now, he has a white ring in his eye, which is really special, but typically the males have a bright red or orange eye, and the girls, the eye is a dull yellow or a brown color. Also, the shape of the shell. A female is going to be completely flat. The plastron is flat, okay? The male, I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of concave there. Really cool, all right? Also, the male has a little bit of a flare around his back legs. I say it looks like the fender on a car, okay? So if it has fenders, it's a male, you know, it's like a little sports car. So those are the primary differences between males and females. Also, typically, males are brighter in color. I'm going to remind everyone that there are exceptions in nature. At another nature center that I worked at, I found a box turtle. It was a female, but she was bright red or yellow and orange. Really brightly colored. Her eye wasn't that bright. It was a bright yellow, but not an orange or a red color. But the rest of her, it looked like a male. So they can, you know, you can get variety in the color. Even the eye color, you can get some variety. Now, I said it lives on land. If they encounter water, so a male, he could have a 5-mile range, and he will walk his range. Sometimes, for some of these box turtles, it takes them more than a year to to completely circuit their entire range. All right, they just get out there and they walk that range, and then when winter comes, they bury themselves under a log or some soft substrate, and then in the spring, they'll come out and continue the circuit. So some of them, it can take more than a year. Most of them, it's about a year that they do this circuit. And that's why people end up finding them. They say, oh, every year, the same week, I see this turtle. And then he disappears and he's not there for the rest of the year. That's because he's walking his circuit. He's covering his range. The females have a smaller range, and they don't cover it the way the male does. The male is really trying to check out the entire range. It's really because he's looking for the girls, okay? So let's take a look at the girl for a second. Now, she was raised in captivity, and what that typically means is you get some deformities in the shell because they're not getting the right nutrients as they're developing. So from a small turtle to a juvenile turtle, those are really important years to get the right nutrients. And if you look, see this dip right here in the shell? That should not be there. Also, the shell is much wider than it should be. She should not be, she's almost a perfectly round circle. She should be more oval shaped. So that is probably because she wasn't getting the right nutrients at the right time. Okay? Someone's asking, how do they know it's springtime? That's a very good question, and it really goes by temperature, which means if we have a warm spell in March, they might come out and start beginning their springtime rituals, and then it gets cold again in April, and they might bury themselves back down again and say, oh, I misjudged that one. So you could occasionally see them out earlier than they want to be, and then they'll just bury themselves again. Okay. So, these turtles, again, I was mentioning if they encounter water as they circle their range, they will cross small bodies of water, little streams and brooks. They typically don't swim across them. Typically, they're just going to hold their breath and wade or go underwater to get to the other side. They can swim. They do sort of a doggy paddle on the surface. Captive turtles, they like to soak because they're not getting the same amount of moisture that they get out in the wild. And in the summer, when it gets really dry, you're not going to find box turtles. They're going to find a moist log or, again, moist substrate that they can bury themselves in, and they'll wait for a rain. And then they'll be out and active while it's moist, and then as soon as it dries up again, they're going to bury themselves again. So they go in and out of bury themselves all the time. They typically want to hibernate at about 52 degrees. So if you were hibernating them in captivity, which we can't do because we do programs with them all winter, so we don't want to hibernate them, you could actually keep them in a refrigerator at 52 degrees. You go in and check them regularly just to make sure that they're okay. But that's typically how people that keep these, that breed them, they just put them in a refrigerator over the winter. It's kind of funny, but it works. All right, let's go back to the male for a second. And let's talk about what box turtles like to eat. I already mentioned that they like worms and berries. Those are two of their primary food sources, lots of moisture in them. They are omnivores, which means they're eating plants and animals. And basically what a box turtle eats, anything that walks slower than they do. So their variety of food is pretty wide. As long as it's moving slowly, they're going to eat it. They might eat an ant if they could catch it, but ants are pretty quick for a box turtle to catch. So typically they're eating slugs, snails, worms, some caterpillars. They will eat roots and bark and nuts and berries. They can eat leaves and flowers, lots of fruits and vegetables. I mentioned they love berries, especially strawberries. Favorite food for them is probably slugs. But if they found mushrooms, they could eat mushrooms that would make us sick. And if they found something dead in the woods, like a dead bird or a dead squirrel, they could eat it. Even if it's rotting in the woods, they can still eat things like that. So really interesting that they could eat things that would really mess us up. Someone says, how do you move a snapper that hunkers down in the middle of the road? Very good question. The first thing I'm going to say if you encounter a snapping turtle, stay away from the front ends. They have a long neck and they typically range in this area here. They're not typically going to go up behind their shell here, so you can pick them up behind the shell like this and at the back. But if you're nervous about that, I wouldn't suggest it. One of my favorite techniques is usually you're in a car when you find them on the road. If you take the floor mat of your car and slide them onto the mat and then just slide the mat off the road, that's a great way to get them across. Do not pick them up by their tails, especially the large ones. The larger they are, the more weight, the less that tail is going to be able to take. So you don't want to pick them up by their tails. You can pick them up by the sides like this, but they will push with their claws. If you're able to, still hold on while they're doing that, some of them are pretty strong, that's a good way to do it. Picking them up this way, you do get nervous, but they really can't get their jaw up there and bite you. They can reach their neck back, but if your finger is here like mine is, can't bite me there, okay? So be very careful. Let's talk about that for a second. So these are omnivores, they're eating anything they encounter. Let's talk about if you find a box turtle in the road, or any turtle for that matter, if you find them crossing the road. Typically, what people want to do when they find a turtle is look for the nearest body of water, because people think that the turtles have gotten lost. Turtles have an internal GPS system, and the turtles that live in water, they can smell water up to 3 miles away. So they know where their pond is. They know where they're going, and they know why they've left the pond. Typically, it's a female, and she's going to find a place to lay her eggs. She wants to lay her eggs in the right substrate. It can't be too wet, so they have to get out away from ponds. Snapping turtles will go a couple of miles from a pond before they lay their eggs. Box turtles, they're staying out in the forest most of the time, so that's where you're going to encounter them. But people find these and bring them and put them in a pond, which the box turtle doesn't appreciate because they don't live in ponds. So you always want to bring the turtle the direction that the turtle was going as it crossed the road. That will help it on its way. If it's going to lay its eggs, you're helping it find a place to lay its eggs. If it's returning from laying its eggs, you'll help it in the direction of its pond. But you don't really know where its pond is. So help the turtle, let the turtle find its way. They say that box turtles' internal GPS, if we took this turtle and brought him to Boston, Massachusetts, he would turn and head straight for the Meigs Point Nature Center because this is his home. So you don't want to move turtles far away from their ranges. They're just going to try and get back to their range. So always help the turtle in the direction that it was going. If you look, you can see this turtle was hit by a car over 20 years ago. And this is a little bit of scarring that's left from when he got hit. It flaked off the shell, the scale that covers the bony plate underneath. Both the scale and the bony plate make up the shell. So you can see a little bit of bone underneath the scale that got damaged. Now it takes a very long time for this to heal, and over that time he got too used to living in captivity, and that's why another nature center had him for most of those 20 years. And that's how we ended up with them. All right, let's talk about their eggs. Now I mentioned that they lay about 8 eggs a year. The female can actually carry her eggs with her for up to 4 years. She's waiting until she has the right conditions. So she's waiting for the right amount of moisture, the right amount of food. That's what she wants. She wants to have just the right conditions to give her eggs the best chance of survival. And that could take 4 years. After, about 3.5 years, she's going to have to lay her eggs. And even if conditions aren't right, she will lay her eggs. She doesn't take care of them. Once she lays those eggs, she's out of there. She's going off. The eggs are on their own. They come out, they're little tiny turtles. We don't see a lot of baby snapping turtles, unfortunately, in Connecticut. Their numbers are so low, it's really hard to find them. Someone says, fantastic, found childhood memories, wish I knew all this 70 years ago. Very cool. Now, years ago, people used to find box turtles and they would collect them as pets. Or they would, draw something on their shell and let them go. And that's how they could see the same turtle in their yards. You can't take these out of the wild anymore. They are protected because their numbers have declined so much. An interesting thing about the box turtle, too, is they were used as a traditional Native American pet. They would keep them, they would pass them down from generation to generation because they actually lived longer than the Native Americans. So they can live over 100 years in captivity. They would live a little bit longer. And typically a Native American isn't going to live that long back then. So these would be passed down. And they used their shell like a calendar. So our calendar has 12 months in a year. Their calendar had 13 months. And if you look at the back, the scales, the scutes, the scale on the back of the shell is the scute. And if you look at our other programs on turtles, you'll learn more about that. There are 13 large scales around. Their year actually started right here, and this was May. May was the beginning of the year. So this is the beginning of the Native American calendar, and it would go around and down here, and that's 13. Now, we have a number of different days in a month. We could have 31, 30, 28, sometimes 29. They had 28 days per month. Every month had the same number of days. And if you count these small scales all the way around the outside, there are 28 of them. So you could mark off the outside scales, and then you knew that this was the next month. Also, the months their names were like planting month, harvesting month, deer hunting month, things like that. Winter cold months are over here. So this was, traditionally how a Native American could track the calendar. How big and old do they get? So I mentioned they live about 100 years. Typically it's 60 to 100 in the wild. And this is a good size. They could get a little bit larger. Now, Turtles, reptiles in general, keep on growing their whole lives. They just grow very slowly as they get older. So this is a very good size. If you look closely at the scales, you can count the rings in the scales to tell how old they are. That works up to about 30 to 35 years. Then the rings start getting smoothed over and the growth rings get so small that you can't really tell them apart. So you can pretty accurately tell how old a turtle is up to about 30 to 35 years. All right, do we have any other questions? I'm going to remind everybody, if you have questions, put them up now. But I'm going to remind everyone, we have a couple of great programs coming up that we're going to be doing on a Zoom conference. You can register for them by going to the Meigs Point Nature Center website, meigspointnaturecenter.org. You would be able to go to the calendar and send an email from there saying that you're interested, and you will get the Zoom password that allows you to do these conferences. There are two. There's one next Saturday, the 9th at 2 o'clock. That one is about the virus, the coronavirus that we're dealing with right now. And we're going to be talking to a doctor about things like, why do we need to wear masks? Why are we keeping social distance? Why do we need to wash our hands? Those things you should, wash your hands anyway. But these are all important things that people might have questions about. And you can conference in, there'll be a chat so that you might be able to ask some questions during this talk. And then our other one is May, I don't remember. It's after that. It's a Tuesday. And that one is going to be, actually, I think that one's coming up this week. You'll have to look on the calendar. It's in May. That one is about horseshoe crabs, the decline of horseshoe crabs. So really interesting. That one's at 4 o'clock. Really interesting. Horseshoe crabs have declined greatly in the state of Connecticut. So we're going to talk about why they're declining and maybe what you can do to help. And you might have an option to conference in questions on that one too. I'm not sure how that one's going to be set up yet, but sign up for those. And we're looking for more speakers to add to that as we go. Can he feel you touching his shell? Good question. Everyone asks that. So really, because this is just scale and bony plates, he can't feel. If I'm rubbing his shell like this, he can't feel that. He can hear it because it makes a little bit of a noise. And if I tap on it, he can feel that, there's something tapping on his shell, but there's not a lot of feeling in the shell. He knows I'm here, because his feet are touching me. He's pretty comfortable with me. Again, he's been in captivity for over 20 years before we got him. So he's pretty used. He's not scared at all. He won't go in his shell. Even if I try and coax him and say, oh, look, you're scared of me, he's not scared at all. So he's not going to go into his shell. And somebody says, I love box turtles. That's awesome. I've met a lot of people that have had box turtles as children. Even the former governor of Connecticut had one when he was a child. So I think that's kind of interesting, that the dynamic of how people used to collect these and keep them and let them go in a few years. We cannot do that now. They need to be out there. They need to be free, able to find each other and reproduce. So I really discourage people from taking turtles out of the wild, especially the box turtles. And any of the threatened or endangered turtles, I don't know, the camera is reversed, but there are some turtles on this board behind me. The spotted turtle, the wood turtle, the box turtle, and the bog turtle are all threatened or endangered in Connecticut and protected. So we need to really watch out for those turtles and protect their habitats. Most of our turtles are threatened or endangered because of loss of habitat or roads cutting across their habitat. All right, do we have any other questions? Do we still have? So the question is about salmonella. You do have to watch out for that with turtles. Again, if you're moving a turtle across a road, it's a good idea to wear gloves or clean your hands immediately afterward. Salmonella is not as contagious as COVID-19, but you really want to clean your hands before you eat or touch your face or anything like that. Most people have a milder, almost like food poisoning reaction with Salmonella. Some people it's much worse, and it could get even worse than that. And there are some things that turtles can carry that can be fatal to people. So you do really want to clean your hands if you handle a turtle. And I have to wash my hands a lot because I'm around turtles all the time. So great question. Keep your questions coming. If you see this video, even if it's not live any longer, you can post a question on it and we will try and respond to all the questions. Or you can send questions in our email. I have a whole list. I think there's 5 or 6 questions that I have to answer. I'm going to try and get to that today from past programs that we've been doing. So let's just keep the questions coming, keep the comments coming. I appreciate all of you telling me where you're from. I like to see that. And if we don't have any other questions, I want to give a shout out to the Friends of Hammonasset. They are helping to feed all the turtles that are here. When do they lay their eggs? So typically box turtles are laying their eggs midsummer through late summer. Again, though, they can hold their eggs for up to 4 years, and a female could lay her eggs at any time that she feels it's safe for them to be laid. So their breeding season does not necessarily match their egg laying season because she can carry those fertilized eggs around with her. Reminder that this afternoon at 2 o'clock, I'll do a short introduction, and then we're going to be posting John Himmelman reading his book about box turtles. So it's really cool. We've got a connection between the 2 programs today, and you'll be able to see all of those. He already did a book on frogs, singing frogs, so you can go to meigspointnaturecenter.org's virtual learning center and the Meigs Point Nature Center YouTube page and see those. Also, I just want to give a little blurb for my Instagram, ranger.russ at Instagram. I saw a really cool bird today. I'm going to be posting a picture of the bird that was out in the parking lot today. So you can see pictures and little short videos of some of the things that I am finding at Hammonasset that are too short and quick to really put up on Facebook. So, and I also put little blurbs about additional things that we're doing here. So you can go to ranger.russ on Instagram and get more information about the programs here at the Nature Center. How many eggs? Average is 8 eggs. So they could lay a few more or a few less, but they average about 8 eggs a year. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching this program. And again, we do these programs at 11 and 2 o'clock from Tuesday to Friday. So tune in anytime to see the live programs. You can go in and look at them in the archive as well. And if you are a teacher or have a topic that you would like to see, send us a message about that too. So thank you all for watching.